In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how I completed the drawing for this flower painting. I discuss reference photos, cropping, aspect ratios, and I include tips for improving your drawing. You want to let this dry thoroughly because graphite really doesn't stick very well to any paint that's moist or wet. I'm using a 2H pencil, although I'll probably switch over to just a regular number 2 pencil for later when I want darker lines. One thing you want to take into account before you even start drawing from a photograph is the aspect ratio. An aspect ratio is the relationship between the height and the width. So this has an aspect ratio of 4:5, which translates into an 8:10 canvas or a 16:20. And you can change that in your photo editor. If you use the crop tool, there's usually an option with the drop-down menu where you can punch in your own aspect ratio and crop the photo down to that proportion. If you don't do that, then when you draw this, it's going to get stretched out on your canvas. Let's say this was like a taller canvas. This photo would then have to be stretched to fit, or you'd have to have some weird extra spacing at the top. One thing to keep in mind when you do this is that the outside perimeter and these shapes actually can help you draw. So I'm just looking at like how far this top flower is from the sides. And I'm also thinking about this is the center of the photograph and this is like the center of the canvas, so the same shapes will be there. I'm seeing this negative shape in the middle. A negative shape is the shape that surrounds the subject, so if you look at this abstract shape here, you can draw that instead of thinking about drawing the flowers, and this is the shape I just drew right here. I don't care about erasing this. I don't care if the lines show up in the final painting. I mean, sometimes you can use like a watercolor pencil if you want to be able to erase the lines. Graphite doesn't erase that well from canvas. So I'm looking at the shape here, and I'm just going to draw something similar. I'm not thinking about drawing a stem, I'm just drawing this shape here that it makes with the edge of the canvas. I don't want to get too much into detail right away, I just would like to get the basic shapes established. Like this outside shape, and all around the outside, and then I'll go in and do these negative shapes. So this is about halfway, so I'm thinking this looks like about halfway, and that's kind of where that little leaf sticks up. So I get the idea that this stem goes right about here, and it starts to straighten out. And again, this is about the center, so it has to be over a little bit from the center. You can actually draw the center point on here and maybe the center of the sides, and you can do the same on your canvas. But for the sake of this demo, I'm just eyeballing it. So I notice this is narrow and then it gets wider. And another thing you can do is compare it to like a plumb line. Like this is almost totally vertical, but you can tell it slants a few degrees to the right. So when you draw it, that's what you want to do. You want to copy that angle. So I'm going to draw the sliver right here, and this too is almost totally vertical on the right side. So here's the middle point, and then this is higher than that, so this is about the point on the canvas. I'm just trying to get a sense for that angle. And I notice that it goes at that angle to about here, so I'm thinking that looks to be about right there. And this is curved, but that should actually be straight. And then I have this other sharp triangle shape on this side. And that's the center, so it's about the same height right there. This is all just judging relationships to where things are placed. And that's kind of straight, and then it curves, so I'll try to replicate that here. I think maybe this is bigger, so maybe I'll move that over slightly. That's almost vertical, it goes to the right a little bit. Once you get a few shapes established, it starts to fall into place. You can see where things go and it goes faster. It's that beginning stage where you don't know where anything is, that's kind of difficult. So I have most of the stems placed in here, and then I could just put in these shapes. I'm thinking about how far that is from the top. And I'm also gauging it over here, so it looks to be about right there. And that does seem to line up with this stem. If you go too detailed, you'll be afraid to paint over it, so you just want to do like the basic outlines. I kind of feel like this stem should be over to the left more, so a trick that I use sometimes to check my proportions in my drawing is to turn the canvas and the reference material upside down. What that does is it gives you a new, fresh perspective on your drawing, and a lot of the distortions will show up. This doesn't look so good to me. I noticed I didn't really straighten this part out too well. This bottom needs to be more defined, and maybe draw this leaf a little better. One thing I like about these flowers is the structure of these stems. They have like flat sides to them. They just have more interest than most stems. I think that this goes in front of that. Oh, maybe there's two of them, that's what it is. I think this is almost like vertical at this part right here. So these are just minor tweaks. I'm just mostly adding in final details. I don't see too much wrong. This goes in front. See how that should line up right here. So I'll just fill that in. I noticed this curves a little bit more. So maybe I could darken some of these lines up. Maybe define the tops of these flowers a little better. I noticed I had this lined up. I think that this bigger shape is more like here. See, I noticed this little blob here is higher up than this section, so move that slightly. I think this is almost ready to start painting on. Just there's a few final details I want to throw on here. I think this stem, if you look at this side, it's kind of weak. Like that should be a more regular curve, and this is too wide at the bottom. That's what's interesting here is if you look at this angle leans really far over. I don't think that angle is actually that steep. So I'll make this line start right here. As I said, this doesn't really matter that much because it's not like a portrait. If I'm off a little bit, people aren't going to notice. Whereas if it's a portrait, if I'm off, you won't recognize the person. So I think just darken this up a little bit here in this part of the flower or on the stem. You can also draw with the paintbrush. I mean, you don't have to get every little detail in. You just want the basic shapes. Okay, I think that's about it. Next up will be the painting. And I like to vary the intensity of it, so there might be some hot spots like that. Just trying to figure out where all the dark areas are. While I have it on my brush, I'll just get those in there now. I think that will help too, where if you have some cooler grays, it will help make the warm area stand out more. I think the larger brush actually does a better job than the small brush because you just do a little dry brushing and it gives you the impression of details. Thanks for watching. Please remember to subscribe, and here are more videos and playlists that you can check out.